Okay, so my name is Dave Callister. I'm the clinical director of Ren'ais'sance Ranch, and I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict in long-term recovery. I'm really grateful to be here tonight and to be able to speak to some things that are, I believe, and feel very important for you as well as for your loved one. Christy invited me to share some of my thoughts and feelings, and gave a wide array listed topics that we could choose from. And the topic that really resonated with me was how family members can best support their loved ones. That's a topic that's really close to home for me, and because I had loved ones who were and are willing to engage in their own recovery process, which I believe has accelerated my own recovery process and been very helpful to our entire family and our healing process as a whole. So, one thing I wanted to say is thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to show up and participate in this family webinar. There are so many drug addicts and alcoholics out there who don't have family members, or who do have family members but who are unwilling to get help, get education, look at their contribution in this family systems disease, which is exactly what it is, and that's how we treat it and talk about it. So the fact that you guys are all willing to show up, to dedicate and commit a portion of your weekly schedule to engage in this process is both admirable and praiseworthy. Let's face it, it's difficult to love a drug addict. If you can't admit that, then you probably have some honesty work to do. And I say that as an addict in recovery. I know that it can be difficult to love. So here's some bulleted items. I want to go over a list very briefly and quickly, and for a reason. So here's what you can do to best support your loved one. First and foremost, find an Al-Anon meeting and attend it regularly. Find a sponsor and work the 12 steps with a sponsor. You know, there's a very big difference between having an intellectual understanding, a conceptual understanding of the 12 steps, and actually implementing and working them with a sponsor. The difference is vast, it's significant, and it's life-altering. That difference is very important to acknowledge. Learn about healthy boundaries. Establish healthy boundaries. Brené Brown talks about boundaries using the acronym BIG, B-I-G. How can I maintain healthy boundaries, stay in my own integrity, and offer the most genuine assumptions about people that I love? So learn boundaries, learn how to have healthy boundaries. One of the boundaries my mom and dad had with me when I was in my addiction was, we love you, you're welcome in our home, drugs and alcohol are not. If you bring drugs and alcohol into our home, you will have to leave. Another example that comes to mind, I was working with a grandmother of a client in family group out in Farmington in Davis County, and she very emotionally, very sincerely, tearfully crying said, my grandson said he was going to commit suicide if I didn't give him money to buy a car. This is a true story. And she was beside herself, and she said, what do I do? A boundary's not going to work there. And with all the urgency with which suicidal ideation deserves, what I told her was, here's what a good boundary will sound like. Sweetie, I hope you don't. I hope you choose to stay, but I'm not giving you money for a car. That's speaking truth with love. It's honoring a boundary, and needless to say, he didn't kill himself, and that boundary allowed him to get the help that he needed to get into recovery. It's important to acknowledge that boundaries don't always lead your loved one to recovery. So, if you're having proper boundaries and it's not leading your loved one to the solution you want for them, it doesn't mean you have bad boundaries. It just means that you have boundaries and you're honoring their agency. It's very critical to acknowledge. Learn about enabling. What does it mean to enable? Here's a very clear and concise and simple definition of enabling. Enabling is doing something for someone that they can and should do for themselves, therefore robbing them of an opportunity for growth. So learn about enabling, see the truth as to how you are enabling your loved one, and get help to stop. Okay.
Okay, we're back. Had a little interruption with the dogs and the HVAC guys. But that was a good segue. So, in review, find and attend an Al Anon meeting, work the steps with a sponsor, learn about and establish healthy boundaries, learn about enabling, and see where you are currently enabling your loved one. Okay. And then the fifth point, speak the truth plainly with love. Now, part of that involves get help seeing your own lies. Everyone that's involved in a family system of alcoholism is telling themselves and others lies. These are not always easy to identify and see, and that's why working the steps with a sponsor is so critical, because that person can help you see your own lies. And they exist. I assure you they exist. And there's no shame in acknowledging that. It takes boldness and courage to acknowledge where you are telling lies and begin to tell the truth with love. Truth is the healing agent and power in recovery. It's truth. Um, so, a couple personal experiences. When I was in treatment, I had gone through residential treatment. I was court ordered. The judge signed a form that said I had to do treatment, so I did, unwillingly initially, and then became more willing. Had a life-changing spiritual experience at the treatment center that I attended, working the 12 steps, and coming to a knowledge that I was worthy, that I was lovable, that I was okay with who I am. And that was a long process. Towards the end of that, I was in an intensive outpatient program, and my dad was driving me to group. At the time, he was Bishop Callister. I joke sometimes I'm a recovering son of a bishop, and I say that with a lot of love. Today, part of my recovery is my faith. It's my religion. It's my relationship with my Creator, with my Savior. Those are who I identify as my higher power today, and that's a big part of my recovery. It wasn't initially the case, and I share this story to illustrate an important point. So, my dad was Bishop Callister at the time, and we were driving to treatment, and I looked at him and I said, "Dad, I have a really serious conversation and question I have to ask you." And he could sense my urgency, and he pulled the car to the side of the road, and I said, our relationship matters to me. What I'm really fearful that if I choose not to be active in the church, if I choose not to serve an LDS mission, um, I'm worried that that's going to impact my relationship with you. And without missing a beat, my dad got it right. Here's a concept. Do you want to be right, or do you want to get it right? Um, as parents, often we have to focus on getting it right, or as spouses, rather than being right. My dad got it right that night, and he said, "Dave, you clearly have light in your life today. You're clearly engaged in something that has purpose and meaning to you. I can see that. It's undeniable." And he said the following. He said, "Our relationship transcends dogma. Our relationship is far more important to me than your worship in a church." And this is from Bishop Callister. I get the chills right now sharing that. I love my dad. We have a wonderful relationship today, and I believe this critical juncture was part of that. He spoke the truth with love. He honored my agency in my recovery process. He didn't try to control it. He didn't try to give me advice. He listened, and he shared his love and perspective. To feel that our connection and relationship was that important to him was healing for me. It was healing for me. And of course, I'm oppositionally defiant, rebellious, pushing against the mores and norms to find myself. In that moment, I had a change of heart, and I thought and felt and experienced, I think I'm going to go on a mission, and I'm going to explore this stuff for myself. I share that story not to illustrate or claim that activity in the church equals success in treatment, because that's not always the case. But for me, that's part of my story and journey, and I'm grateful that my dad had enough recovery tools and foundational knowledge and understanding about the steps, about codependency, to get it right and really be in the spirit of that moment for me. I believe it altered my life forever. Um, so, so the other experience that I would wrap up with is a very ancient story. Some of you may recognize. I'm not a doctrinal expert, but I think I got this story down pretty well. Regarding the children of Israel, there was a group of people who were going on an exodus through the wilderness, and they had a prophet leader named Moses, and they were in the wilderness for 40 years. And during this process, a lot of things happened. One of the things that happened is that they were being poisoned by fiery flaming serpents. Viewing this story as a metaphor or an allegory, we all have poisonous flying serpents that are biting us in the form of addiction, in the form of character defects, in the form of codependency, in the form of mental illness. We all have these snakes inside of us that have the potential to kill us. So this group of people goes to Moses, their prophet leader, and they ask for advice. And he lifts up his staff that has the emblazoned serpents wrapped around it, ironically symbolizing not only Jesus Christ, but also symbolizing the very serpents and snakes which were biting them. And he said, "Look and live." And the story goes that many looked and lived, and they were healed, but many perished and were lost because of the easiness of the way and the simpleness of the task. Um, this is a recovery parallel. We have to look directly, willingly, voluntarily at the snakes which are poisoning us. For you as a family member, that might be your tendency to want to control, to use shame, to enable, to do everything you can possibly imagine doing to compel your loved one into sobriety. And it doesn't work. It does not work. Um, these suggestions of attend Al-Anon, work the steps with a sponsor, learn about boundaries and implement boundaries, learn about enabling and see where you are enabling. These, I often feel like I'm holding up the staff saying, if you will just look at this staff, you will live. But many loved ones, many family members refuse to do this because surely it must be more complicated than that. Or, yeah. I have an understanding of the 12 steps. I attend ARP. It's a beautiful, wonderful program, but it lacks working the steps personally with a sponsor. I can't reiterate the importance of that enough. Um, so that's what I would recommend. That's what I feel you can do. How family members can best support their loved one. The best thing for your loved one is your recovery. Um, I share that with all the love that I can muster, and I really appreciate you tuning in tonight. Hopefully, I've shared something that sparked something within you, um, and you take it from here. The growth. I really believe as a therapist, what happens inside the confines of the therapy office, it's just practice. The real growth, the real change happens when the patient leaves and implements what they've learned in the process. So my name's Dave. Please contact me if there's anything I can do to help you. I believe Christy will list my email address, contact info below. Love you. Best of luck. God bless you in your recovery efforts. Thank you.